This segment brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission. Progress powered by Kansas farmers. Well, here we are again. Of course, coming up on the 21st of this month is the total eclipse, at least in part of the country and especially here in Kansas. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about space exploration today because Kansas is a great place to be able to look at the sky. If you can get out of the city, you can see the full glory of the Milky Way and the blazing stars and planets and all that. And I know many of you are probably familiar with the name Clyde Tombaugh.
And you ought to be.
Yes. Of course, he wasn't born in Kansas, but at least he got educated in Kansas. And then went off to Arizona. And yes, he discovered Pluto. And of course, there's been some discussion in recent years.
Which may or may not be a planet.
Yeah. Well, it might be a planet, and well, it's a planet again. And then now we're looking at yet another planet beyond Pluto. But yes, Pluto is now officially again another planet.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Anyway, next is the story about Clyde Tombaugh, his humble beginnings, and how he discovered Pluto. Here's a story by Ron Wilson, director of the Huck Boyd National Institute for Rural Development at Kansas State University. Clyde Tombaugh is the man who discovered Pluto. In his autobiography, Out of the Darkness, Tombaugh describes how it all began. He was born on a farm in Illinois in 1922. His family moved to a wheat farm near Burdett, Kansas. While studying geography in the 6th grade, Tombaugh thought, what would the geography on other planets be like? Clyde's uncle Lee lived on a farm nearby. He was an amateur astronomer. Lee lent him a simple telescope and an astronomy book, which Clyde found fascinating. Scientists like Galileo became his childhood heroes. In 1925, Clyde was a senior at Burdett High. He was selected by his school to participate in a state scholastic competition at Kansas State University and finished 4th in the physics competition. More importantly, he discovered a direction in life. In my situation, college seemed utterly impossible, Tombaugh wrote. He went back to work on the farm. Clyde wanted a telescope of his own, but couldn't afford to buy one. He built one on the farm using the crankshaft of a 1910 Buick and parts from a cream separator. He made drawings of what he observed of the planets and sent them to scientists at Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona. The timing was perfect. The observatory director was looking for an amateur assistant. Ultimately, Clyde was invited to come to Arizona to work in the observatory. By working for neighbors harvesting wheat, he had earned enough money for a one-way train ticket. In 1929, he went to Flagstaff and reported to work at the observatory. One of his jobs, along with giving tours and putting logs in the furnace, was to compare photographic images of outer space in an effort to locate what scientists speculated was a trans-Neptunian planet, another planet beyond Neptune. The distant stars were fixed in space, but planets would move. So he would compare night sky photos taken at different times to look for evidence of movement. Of course, he had to cover the entire night sky, so this was a huge and daunting task. He set about to methodically review these telescopic images. He spent 7,000 hours examining about 90 million star images. On February 18th at 4 p.m., he suddenly spotted movement when comparing two photos. He carefully checked his work. There was no doubt he had found a planet. For the next 45 minutes or so, I was in the most excited state of mind of my life, Tombaugh wrote. His supervisors instructed him to re-photograph this region of the night sky so as to be absolutely certain. He did so and verified his findings. On March 13, 1930, the Lowell Observatory announced the finding of a ninth planet in the solar system. The news caused a sensation. It's customary to name planets after mythological deities, Tombough wrote. An 11-year-old girl in Oxford, England, suggested the name Pluto, the Greek god of the lower world, and the name was selected. Tombough went back to study at the University of Kansas and ultimately became a professor at New Mexico State University, so his dream came true. What an amazing accomplishment for a young man from a rural community like Burdett, population 247 people. In 1930, young Clyde Tombaugh made the historic discovery of another planet. We salute Clyde Tombaugh and all scientists who are making a difference with discoveries of their own. Fort Wallace stood on the frontier in the midst of the Plains Indians Wars on a major stage route and rail line. Beside the 1865 stagecoach station, a modern museum with thousands of artifacts tell that story, like the fossil of a 40-foot plesiosaur is suspended from the ceiling. Located on Highway 40 midway between Hayes and Colorado Springs, the Fort Wallace Museum is as welcome a sight today as the fort itself in the 1860s. Discover the fighting sport in the West.